Is everybody ready? We're going to actually code now. Exciting. I hope you remembered what Ryan taught you, because we're going to start doing that, and some parts I'm going to let you try and figure it out yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to add JavaScript to your Capco profile. So, at the beginning, we talked about Git. So, if everybody could go to this link, it will bring you to a GitHub page, and you can clone the repository there. So we'll start with that. If you don't remember how to open up or clone a repository, it's git clone, and then the URL thing.
It's actually really important that you don't download this as a zip, because you need the Git things for this, so make sure you clone it.
Yes.
And if you need help cloning it, raise your hand and someone will help you.
Just to repeat what Ryan said in case you didn't hear it, you need to actually clone the repository and not just download the zip file, because we're going to be using some Git features. And again, if you have questions or anything, raise your hand and TA/staff will come to you. TA/staff. There's one.
Guys, just FYI, our question document, today's questions are at the top. Okay, so like don't paste questions at the bottom as yesterday. So that formatting on our part will fix it in the future. But like, you put your questions somewhere like just like place in the middle. Yeah, it's bad. You can find them.
Thanks, Alex.
Can I get a show of hands who's still getting the code? Okay, cool. I'll give it another minute. Reminder, if you are in tilde, if your directory currently is in tilde, that is wherever you clone it, that's where it's going to be under. So it's probably better if you guys move to change directories, CD, to documents, or desktop, so you know where that is and are able to access your code and clone there. If you need help, please raise your hand high. Thank you. Another show of hands who has not got the code. Cool. That seems like most people, if you are able to find your code, then you can move on to the next step. And if you can open your code editor, and if you're in VS Code, this is what VS Code should look like. Well, it should zoom in. Alright. If you can open up the whole folder, and again, reminder, you can do that by doing File, Add Folder to Workspace, and then clicking the entire folder you want to add, which should be catbook-workshop 0, and then click Add. It will then show up over here on the side, and you'll be able to see all the code. This little tree directory. And if you click on any of these files, it will show you what that file contents is on the side. This is profile.html. Cool. If you can also open up your web browser, and you can click on your profile.html and drag it in, or open it, you can then view our HTML files, which should look something like this. This way we'll be able to see what our code changes look like as well. I'm going to just zoom in. Does everybody have that set up? If not, please raise your hand. Cool. If you need help still, please raise your hand and one of our TAs will come to you. Cool. For everybody else, we're going to do our first exercise, like a warm-up, based off of the stuff we started learning from your Pine stuff. So, heating up with JavaScript. If you look at your files, we already have a folder called JS, which is where your JavaScript will go. And inside we made a file already called profile.js. And if you go in there, it should be empty. So, JS, profile.js should be completely blank. And so the first thing we're going to do is actually link to the JavaScript files in profile.html. So the last thing that our client explained was how to link this. It's this line of code. Oh, gosh. Okay, it's this line of code. And we're going to add it to the end of the page so it actually loads after the rest of your page has. So it should still be within your HTML tags, because it is part of your whole HTML file, but after body. So we're going to try to do that first, and then we'll move on to the next step, so ignore the alert for now. And I will demonstrate this in a couple as well to show. When you've got this, if you could look up at me so I can kind of tell. Okay, coolio. I'm going to also do it myself, so as a chat. So right, this is profile.html. We want to add it after everything gets loaded, so we're going to do it after body. And it's just script. We're going to link it to the source in JS, profile.js. And then I have auto-completion on, so it auto-completes the end of the script tag. So after body and right before HTML. Is this a big enough size for people to see? If not, raise your hand. that better? Cool. Nice. I will move the Explorer to the side. There you go. Remember to save, too. So, that line just loads the script in, but because we have nothing in profile.js, nothing's going to happen even though we loaded it in. So just to make sure everything's working correctly, we're going to add an alert to profile.js. It's completely empty. What you're going to do is add alert. You can make it say whatever you want. We're going to say hello world in mine. Does everybody have that in? If you don't, please raise your hand. I know I'm asking these in the positive, but I want you to raise your hand in the negative. Okay, cool. I'm going to add this myself, so I'm just going to add. Okay. Cool, and remember to save. So then if we go back to our loaded HTML page and refresh, it should give you an alert. If you do not have this, your script did not load. And that probably means you put it in the wrong place. This is important because we're going to load other stuff. Does everybody, if you don't have this, raise your hand. Okay. Can we get a couple staff to help people with hands raised?
Make sure you save too.
To save your files, Control S, Command S are all options, or you can do File, Save.
Get out.
I've never heard of one. Okay, my
Yeah, what's that?
Can I get another raise of hands of people who are still working on this? Okay, cool. Well, our TAs are helping people out. We're going to move on to the next step. So now we know that your JavaScript is in. So we're going to start actually interacting with the HTML document and objects on it. So what we're going to try to do is get the element with the ID profile description and then console log its inner text. I'm going to go and show you where that profile description is in the HTML file first. So if we go to the profile.html, profile description is this div right here that says, I am an avid cat lover. I have 9 different cats. So we're going to try to get the inner text, which is that says, I am an avid cat lover. I have 9 different cats. And if we look on our actual website, that's this text here. That's this div. And we're going to try to grab all that text to be able to access this object. So we're going to work through this together. Ryan briefly mentioned how to do this, but we're going to first step do this together. So everything we're going to be doing as well is going to be in the JavaScript. We're purely writing JavaScript today, so we're only going to be using profile.js. You will not need to edit index.html. So here is the method to do this. You might remember document.getElementById is the method we'll be using. Document refers to your HTML document where you loaded your script. So it's going to search in that document for an element with the ID profile description. We put that in as a string, which is basically pure text. And it will look for something that has that ID in it. It's only a single element because IDs are unique and it will only get you one element. As such, we don't need to worry about whether it returns an array or list. It will return you just the object with that profile dash description ID. So, what it returns is what we call a DOM object. Basically, it's an element or an object. Within it has certain attributes, such as inner text. Inner text is what is in between the divs, and it will give us and return that. So we can access that, because what we did was we saved the returned object by getElementById to the variable or constant profile description. And then we can access its attributes by doing profile description dot inner text, much like the way we access the inner parts of objects that Ryan also mentioned. So what we'll do is we'll be console logging this. Your console, if you remember from yesterday, there's an inspector where you could Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, right-click, inspect element. It will pull up the sidebar or sometimes the bottom panel. And we've looked at before. I'm going to show this to you real quick. We've been looking at this inspector, which lets you highlight different parts of the HTML file in your document. We're going to be moving, there's a panel to the side, which I understand is kind of small, but it says console. Console is where, please ignore the error, but console is where we're going to be logging that to. So what console.log is, it will show us whatever we pass into it in that little bar. So we're going to try to log and get a return of the inner text of profile-description, which to start off, I'm an avid cat lover. So we're going to do this line of code, in profile.js. You can remove the alert if you would like. That was just purely for us to see whether or not your JavaScript was loaded, and add this. And if you have any questions or need help, please, as always, raise your hand or use the questions document. JavaScript also is case sensitive, so if you do not capitalize the right things, it will tell you that's not function and will not give you anything. So for getElementById, every word except for get is uppercase, and that's a word. I always screw that up myself. So. Can I get a raise of hands of people who are still working on adding this? Okay, we'll skip over a minute. If you do not, please raise your hand. Cool. I'm going to do this myself now, and we'll show how it looks like. If you load your document, your HTML document, and look at your console, you should have, I am an avid cat lover, I have 9 different cats, blank, 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 in your console log. And if we reload it, you can see on the side over here, in real small text, that it's been logged. So if you have this, you did it. Congrats! Your JavaScript can now access your document. You can pick up DOM elements. If you don't, it's okay. We're going to figure it out, I promise. Please raise your hand. Okay, cool. If you're still working on this, please raise your hand so that we can get staff to help you. And I know we're all kind of short, so you might need to raise your hand a little higher. Sorry. Okay. Cool. We're going to move on to the next step. So we're still doing exercise 1, but now we're going to let you change it. Because right now all we did was log it and access that element. We can also change it ourselves. So we're going to set inner text of profile name, not description, to your name. So we're going to, does anyone know how you would do this? We're going to do a pop quiz. Please raise your hand if you'd like to answer. Yes?
Profile name equals document dot get element by ID, and then get the element by profile name, and I forgot.
Okay, so you got the profile name. That's correct. So what he said was constant use the same get element by ID and use profile dash name as the ID instead of profile dash description. Does anyone have any idea how to change the inner text? Yes?
Try profile description dot inner text equals name.
Yeah. So you can do, I'll show the code actually. You can get the profile name and then instead of logging it, we can actually set it to something else. So we'll access inner text and then set it equal to a string because we want it to show up as text. So in this case, we set our name to Aaron Sipser, which is not my name. But please try doing this and changing your profile name to your name, not Aaron Sipser. None of us except for Aaron Sipser or Aaron Sipser. Yeah, so the question was, why are we changing it using JavaScript? In this case, we might want stuff sent from later on when we talk about servers, might want to be changed dynamically or using JavaScript. Maybe we'll show an example later where we actually do want changes that are going to be dynamic. So we're just doing an example, so perhaps theoretically you wouldn't actually do this to change profile name, which is going to stay the same when you're accessing the website. But when we actually do other events or other changes, we might want to update using this. It also lets you update without having to refresh your page, because if you changed it in the HTML itself, you have to refresh the page to see those changes. Well, JavaScript is running in the background and can make those changes without refreshing the page. Good question. Quick show of hands. Who still is working on this? Cool. We'll give it one more minute, and then I'm going to do this myself. So. Alright, coolio. I'm gonna add this to my own JavaScript. Pop quiz, what's my name? Does anyone know? Alright. Remember to save your files. So now if we change this and refresh the page, I'm now Aaron Sipser, and I have lots of cats.
He's allergic.
Cool. So you should be able to see your name. Hopefully your name is not Aaron Sipser. Yeah. Does everyone have this? Is there anyone else who's still working on this? Please raise your hand and we will help you. Coolio. Awesome, you did exercise 1. Exercise 1 is basically being able to access and change HTML DOMs, and you did it. So we're gonna bring it to a boil now. I'm sorry, these puns aren't mine. But just, you can probably guess who wrote this. We're gonna be populating based off of a JSON object. So these were objects that Rupine mentioned earlier. Where we're going to set it equal to a user. This is incorrectly done because we did not say let user equal, but ignore that. And you can add attributes such as name, which we're going to be Rupine now, and we can add a last post. So we want to be able to create a profile page in a similar style for any user, which we're going to make an object. And this is kind of the purpose behind that. What we're actually going to do though is we're going to change and update it based off of this object. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a hard reset. We're going to use checkpoints. So briefly, I'm going to mention how this works. What we're doing is we have several branches, which are basically different versions of the same code, saved at different spots, or different changes. Get reset hard removes whatever you just did. Sorry. And get checkout will let you switch to another version. So what you're going to do in your console is do get reset -- hard. Enter. And then get checkout ex2. So that's exercise 2. And we did a few small changes to prep you for this next exercise. So let's do this first. And please raise your hand if you need help.
Yeah, if it doesn't work for you, raise your hand.
Make sure that when you are in your terminals or, yeah.
Make sure you're also in the same directory as your project.
That. You're not in the same directory, it will be confused why you're trying to use Git on somewhere that doesn't have a Git project. Okay, I'm going to do this myself so you can kind of see what that looks like. So if you look at ignore the other ones. The one in the top left corner is the one I'm using. I can do get reset -- hard. It says the page is your head. Don't worry about that. No error. You're good. And then we'll do git checkout, ex2, and it will say that you switched to a new branch. And then that means success. If you now look at your files, profile.js and a bunch of stuff you didn't just write. If you need help, please raise your hand. Cool. Staff is coming.
Raise your hand if you need help.
Can I get a raise of hands of people who are still working on this? I know this part is a little confusing because it may have saved your last version and you might need to reset. And you need to make sure you're in the right directory. Okay, cool. We're going to move on to the next step. If you look at profile.js, we have this code. We have this user saved as this object with retirement and a last post. We also have this empty function that says render user data that will take in a user and currently does nothing. And then at the very end on line 10, we see render user data. So we're actually calling the function and executing it, and we're passing in user, the constant defined at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually fill out render user data, the function, and we want to actually update the name and latest post based on our user data. So what we're going to do is find the elements in the HTML that you want to update using JS, using getElementById. Make sure you can look into the HTML and find out what those IDs are. And then we want to change their inner text based on the properties in a user. Similar to how we did earlier just now in exercise 1. Oh, don't look at the solution. So we're going to try and let you guys do this yourself. You should be able to use exercise 1 stuff. If you need help, raise your hand. Try also Google, which is a wonderful thing, or other search engines minus Yahoo, because I don't trust Yahoo, I'm sorry. They're not a sponsor, so I can say this. So, again, we want to update it based off of user, so you want a last post, and you want to be able to change the name. So we just changed things in the last exercise, so that should be similar. And you should be able to find the ID in HTML. And I will, in a couple minutes, in case you're having trouble finding where you should change last post, I will also go find that and show you. But first, I'm going to give you guys a hand at trying to do this yourselves. A reminder, you should be filling out code inside of the function. How are you doing? You can give me a thumbs up, or a thumbs down. Okay. I will show some of the functions we used last time, in case you forgot, and that will be. Here's an example profile name again. If you're struggling with something, raise your hand, because probably a lot of other people are too, and we can try and get hints / address this together. Teamwork.
Forward to the instructions again, just so we can
Alright. Okay. Hi. Alright, we had a question about why it still works if I don't use let or I don't use const. I'm going to explain what's going on. So JavaScript likes to make things work, even if it shouldn't. So what's happening there is it's actually creating a global variable with that name and then using it. This can be problematic because you don't necessarily always want to create a global variable, which then if you use like the same variable in different functions, but they're all referencing the global variable, you're changing something for every function you do. So always use let when you declare. It's scoping, and we will probably talk about this in more advanced JavaScript, but for now just take my word for it and use let. Otherwise you will have broken code later on.
just scoping, and can you move forward to the instructions again so people see what they need?
Okay, does everybody have something like this already? I'm going to move back to the instructions. Coolio. These are the steps we're doing. Who has updated the name and it's working? Nice, let's go. Who has updated the last post and it's working? Well, that's pretty good. All right, nice, nice. Is anyone having trouble finding or figuring out the ID for last post? Please raise your hand. question, please raise your hand. Or else I will reveal the solution. Okay, got it. I'll wait. Who's still working on this? Cool. One more minute, and then I'm going to try doing it myself. And we'll see how I mess up, and then we'll see why I make those mistakes or what the thought process is as well. Cool, yeah. I'm going to walk through me trying to do this. So first thing I'm going to do is like, oh, I need to change last post. So I wonder what that is. I can either look through this HTML, which is a lot of text, or I'm going to personally myself come over here, go back to inspector, and the last post is here. And I was like, oh, okay. Last post, the ID is profile-status, according to this. So in my profile.js, I will say let last post, and I'll do a document.getElementById for what it was profile-status. Cool. Now I want to change last post inner text to equal whatever is passed in by a user. So I'll do a user dot last underscore post. Cool. So I think that's going to change last post. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and try changing name as well, because I'm ambitious. So what we did for name was, if I want to find that again, go back. Oh, it's profile-name is the ID. You can find it here. So let profile name get element by ID, and we'll do profile-name. And I'm going to put all of my variables together, and I'm going to change things together. So I'm just not going to break it up. And we change the inner text, not HTML, to a user dot name. Cool. I think this is going to work, so I'm going to save it and refresh the page. Cool. That looks right. All right, I think I'm happy. So I'm going to go back, and we're going to check. So a quick note before I continue to the solution and see if I'm actually correct is the reason why we load things at the end, the script, is if we hadn't, document.getElementById would not work. If we had loaded that before the body, it would have tried to get an element that doesn't exist. Because at that point, the document and the HTML has not loaded, which is why we put it at the end. So if you're having issues with things not changing or getting errors, the reason perhaps might be because you're loading at the beginning and before the document actually loaded. Cool. So they did it a different way, which is instead of using and factoring out into variables, they just went ahead and changed it by getting the element and then changing the inner text immediately. But both ways work. Does the solution look good to everybody? You don't have to write it like this. And I might even say this is not the best way to do it in case you want to render user data and use other DOM elements again. This will only let you access them once, while I can access them several times by saving them to a variable. I hope that does not sound like jargon. If it does, please let me know. Okay, please raise your hand if you're still working on this exercise. All right, we're going to move on to the next exercise then. So exercise 3 is we're no longer continuing with the boiling jokes. And we're going to talk about Navbars. So we're going to do git reset again, and we're going to check out the next exercise. So do git reset dash dash hard, and then git checkout EX3 for exercise 3. I'm going to do this myself real quick. If you still need reference, it's written over there with the lines are. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close profile.js and profile.html because I made changes to them and it might be confused. Sometimes what happens is if you keep them open with changes, it's going to keep those tabs open as new files that have not been saved yet when you do git reset hard. So in order to make sure I see those changes and don't accidentally save my changes again, I'm going to close those and then reset. So I'll git reset dash dash hard. It says head is now changed, which means success. And then I'll do git checkout. Spelled correctly. EX3. And it'll tell me I switched to a new branch. If you see already on this branch, that means you already changed it to EX3 previously. Does everybody have this? If you don't, raise your hand. All right, cool. We're going to quickly check out what changes were made. So, if you look in JS, we'll see that now there's a Navbar.js. This is the one we're going to work in now. Profile.js will look very similar, so it will have the solution for the last few already in there. And it will also call render Navbar for us. We're going to do and make changes to actual Navbar though. So you should have render or Navbar.js in your JavaScript folder. Cool. Did everybody have this? If you didn't, raise your hand. Okay. Cool. We're going to move on? So, what are we going to do this time? We're going to actually fill in a new Navbar item, this function that's empty, which is in profile.js. That doesn't sound right. Okay, sorry. New Navbar item is in Navbar.js. And it should be this function here that only has a comment. The two dashes before the line signifies a comment. And we're going to fill out this function. So, what we're going to do is we're going to create a link item, link it to a URL, and then put that text, we're going to put text inside that element, and then return the function. So, to show you what that looks like, we're going to look at profile.html, which has an example. So if we look at, we have a Navbar here, right? All right. This area, this div that says navbar-nav, that has a bunch of commented out stuff in here, has comments that tell you that this Navbar item will be programmatically inserted, which is what we're about to do. And we have an example class here of what you want to do. So for example, we want to have a link item, a class item with nav item, nav link. We're not going to include disabled, so you can ignore that. We want it to have text. And this is what we're going to insert into here with using JavaScript. So we're not going to edit the HTML file. So if you remember from Rupine's lecture previously, we talked about you can create elements with JavaScript, and then you can also change, we just did changing inner text, and we're also going to figure out how to change and give it a URL as well as classes. Oh, okay, my animations aren't working. But we're going to let you guys try this on your own first. So again, Google is your friend. We have not told you how to add a link to something or figure out that attribute. Try to Google it. Try to DuckDuckGo it or other search engine it. General structure though, we're going to be doing this in new Navbar item. So you'll be filling out this function. What we're passing in is text and URL. If you cannot, is this big enough for everybody to see? Please raise your hand if it's not. Okay. So you'll be using text and URL to figure out what this A element will have. Okay. And you'll be linking it to the URL and returning the element. These are the steps written right here in your code. I'm going to go back to the previous slide. It says this, with the wrong profile.js, but navbar.js is the answer for where all this is. And you guys are going to try to do this. If it's done correctly, you should see navbar items being added to your nav. And you refresh the page. I'm going to you guys go at it first, and then I'll give you some hints as we keep going. If you're having trouble, ask questions. You can ask the questions dog. You can ask me. If you ask me, I can probably help more than one person because other people are probably dealing with the same thing as you. And raise your hand if you would like a TA or staff member. Hint, you should create the element first. You'll be modifying the same element, so don't create different elements and change different ones. Right on. Hello. The text might show up in blue. Some of our CSS may not be great. So if you are trying to see if it worked, go over and hover over the navbar, and if you see links appear, you did it. If you don't see links appear, they're not there. But you might not see them because they're blue right now.
If you add the classes that are shown in the commented section, nav item and nav link, to the element, then they will not show up in blue, they'll show up in white.
I'm going to repeat refines them. If you don't see it, if you see it in blue only and not white, the reason is because you do not add the classes. So if you look in profile.html, at the commented out ones, there's nav item and nav link. If you add those two classes to it correctly, they will show up in white. Thanks for the catch refine. We have not told you how to add classes, so that's a Google or a Yahoo. Maybe not a Yahoo. How many people have it? Curious. Ooh, nice. Congratulations. How many people are like halfway there? Maybe. Okay. Does someone tell me what they're struggling with? So I can get hints, or just write their code out. Okay, we're going to sit here in silence. I'm going to do the first step, and I'm going to create a link element, or try to. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like, just to see where we are. So I'm going to create new Navbar item and try to document dot create element. And we're creating an element that's an A tag. I think that works. Can someone tell me what to do next to change the text?
But first,
Please raise your hand so I can call on
is not
you. Hmm?
the item that you created, is it defined?
Sorry, could you say that?
Nav item, is it defined?
I defined it by using let. Let defines nav item
And then-
as a new variable.
And you create something A.
Yes, I created something A, which is an A element. So create element lets you, if you remember we did HTML is filled with tags, and these are elements, like that. So those are what we call elements, and then what we can do is, with create element, it's asking you what type of elements we want to create, and we're creating an A tag. So that's why I passed in the string A. If I wanted to create a div, I would pass in the div. So from here, how do we change or add inner text
So
to
A
the
dot
element?
text?
Hmm?
A dot text? Or A-
So, could you repeat that a little louder? Sorry.
A dot inner text or something?
Yeah, so it would not be a dot inner text.
A dot text?
It's inner text, but the reason for that is because we can't use a dot inner text though. I'll try it real quick and we'll set it to equal to text, right? The reason why this doesn't work is a is a variable and we have not defined this variable. So what should this actually be? Which one?
Nav item?
Yes, it should be nav item. So this should set the inner text of this element to text. Does this make sense to everybody? Yes?
Should we use let or const for nav item?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the reason I'm using let is I'm modifying it. Theoretically, if you don't actually reassign the variable, you should use const. So I could also use const here because I'm not going to make a new nav item and change, I'm not going to like set nav item later equals to 3 or something. In that case, if I'm resetting what it equals to, it should be let. If not, it can be either let or const. Symbol. I'm using let here, but both const works. Theoretically, good coding practice, it should be a constant. Our next step is we're going to change what it links to. So how would I do that? Does anyone know?
Nav item.
Yes.
Nav item dot
Awesome. So navitem.href equals URL. We'll set the .href, the hypertext reference, attribute of the A element equal to whatever URL is. So if you remember from yesterday's lectures, A tags are links, and you can set where they reference to using href. So if this was actually an HTML tag, it would look something like argf, and then whatever the URL is. This is not a real place. And it would actually, that is currently what we would look like. Does someone else, does anyone not get that? Please don't be afraid. We're learning together, and I might be wrong. How do I add classes? Does anyone know? Yes?
Class list, and then you add.
Cool. Yeah. There are two ways to do it, and that is one of them. is do nav item dot class list, camel case, good. And then do add as a function, and then you can add a string, nav item, for example. And we want to add both. If we look at the original text, profiles.html, we want nav item and nav link. So what we'd have to do is we have to add both lines. That's one way of doing it. Yes?
I have a question about how you create an element page. Like if you create an element like the user thing, would it still have the property area?
So HTML, what it will do is you can reference non-existent attributes. So B does not have an href, but you could add that, it just wouldn't actually function, is what happens. Great question. You can create non-existent tags, and it will parse it, but they will only be rendered as divs, basically, unless it exists already.
So if I created an element and did like the same thing,
Yes.
it wouldn't like link to anything.
It wouldn't link it to anything. You would still get, perhaps the inner text would change, and you would get the classes added. It would also show up that you added href if you looked at the code. If with inspector and you checked it out, it would show that you had that, but it would not actually function. So I'm going to show you another way of doing adding the classes real quick, which is you can do nav item dot class name and set it equal to a string. And your string is literally populating what the actual A tag, if you had class equals, it would populate what that is here, which is why you only need one line to do this. Both work, or should work, unless I mixed up the syntax. And the last thing we're doing is returning it. How do I return? Someone want to tell me?
Return that out.
Please speak louder if you're speaking, because I have bad ears. Sorry. Because we're not done yet. We still need to return this. Yes? Yes. Return now item. So this theoretically should work if I did everything correctly. I'm going to test this out before letting you guys copy this whole down in case it's wrong. So always remember to save. It won't render if you didn't save it. And I'm going to refresh. Woo! And I got icons. Home and profile. It worked! Huzzah! Before I continue, does anyone know why I added home and profile? Because I didn't add home or profile anywhere here in this function, right? The words home and profile aren't here. Where does it happen? Yes? Yes! Awesome. So lines 15 and 16 actually call this function and then add the new element to your document. So if you remember from earlier, just creating the element doesn't actually put it anywhere. We need to actually append the child to somewhere on the page, which we've done for you in render Navbar already. So, recap. Here's the solution, which looks like what we did. Nice. Does anyone have any questions before we continue? Yes?
It's easier the function not being called, the function has been defined, but it's not being called itself.
Okay. It's being, like where in the code is it being called?
Yes, like if you look at the file of navbar.js, and you see two function definitions, but we don't see anywhere the function being called.
Yes, good question. So, here we just have functions defined. They don't seem to actually call render navbar. So render navbar calls new navbar item, but where are we calling render navbar? What we've actually done is we've rendered the navbar in profile.js. It's over here. So if you remember earlier, We talked about how we had to put the script at the bottom of the page because it runs top down, so it'll load first, then call the scripts. What's actually happening is this is called waterfall loading, which is loading in order. What we've done actually, if you look in profile.html, is we've loaded the Navbar script first, and our Navbar script defines those functions. And then afterwards, we've loaded the profile.js script, which then will run any functions run in profile.js. And in profile.js, we call render Navbar. So it is called there. Great question, though. Any other questions before we move on to the next exercise? Yes?
On the solution slide, it says inner HTML. So
Yes, great question. So inner text and inner HTML kind of do similar things. The difference between the two is inner text will only let you set strings. So inner HTML will let me put in a string that has actual HTML tags in it. In this case, we only want to change the text. So we should use inner text. Inner HTML would parse though if I added something like this would, if I had done inner text for this, you would see the tags literally written out with the A tag. If I use inner HTML, it'll actually parse out that and render A tags. The reason we use inner text in our solution, in the solution I wrote, is because we went through inner text in exercise 1 and 2, but also because that makes sure we don't render anything that's not text. And it's just stricter. Great question. Any other questions? Nice. Okay. On to our last exercise. Time to get fed. Oh, yes. Sorry.
So the functions render Navbar and Navbar item are in Navbar.js, right?
Yes.
How does calling a function in profile, like, how does it know to look in that file for the functions?
Yeah, totally. So what happens is because of waterfall loading, what we actually did was your browser is first, since we called Navbar.js first, your browser basically has loaded those functions and now has them defined. So your browser doesn't actually look for them, but it has it defined because of what you're actually doing through this in Navbar.js is this is doing the function thing defines a function, and then your browser remembers that. And then now your browser runs profile.js next, and it's like, oh, I do have this defined already, and then we'll run the function. If you had switched the order, it would yell at you and be like, I don't have this defined. But because of the way it's loaded in, it works. So this is important, maybe perhaps later, if you're loading in external libraries or other people's codes and want to reference their functions, or reference functions you define in another place. Order matters. Any other questions? They're great questions, guys. Cool. Exercise 4. We're going to make our feed now. You might have noticed we have the latest post. Maybe we want to actually post things. So we're going to do get reset again, and we're going to check out exercise 4, EX4. I'm going to do this myself as well. So, again, we have it written there. I know this might be a little hard to read because I erased over the number several times, but that's a 4. I'm going to close out these files.
Oh, it's there. It's right here.
And go back here and reset. Cool. This is my branches now.
It's working.
EX4. Is anyone still working on this? Okay, cool. Nice. Guys, you're doing a great job using Git, by the way. We just taught it this morning and now you can use it. This next exercise, we're going to be adding more stuff. So we're going to create a news feed, much like Twitter or other social media websites like Facebook. So we're going to be using an index.js. We're going to add an event listener, which is something Rupine talked about at the very end of his lecture, if you remember. And we're going to watch when this button is clicked. So I'm going to first review some changes we did in the index.html, because you might realize there was never a button there. So if we reload the page, okay, well, home, TY. We'll see this. There's now an input and a little nice post button. I'm going to zoom in. So this is our new status button. And it says new status button, BTN, for the ID of that. So what we want to do is add an event listener to this item in the JavaScript. And then when it is clicked, we want to create a new div. And we're going to add this div to another div called the stories div. And then that div should contain the text that was put in new status text, which is the text box here. Press the hello. So that's what we're going to do next. We'll be using things add event listener, which is new. You have to use the similar thing of creating an element and remembering to append the element to the page. And we're going to let you do it yourself again. The internet is your friend, once again. I will be stepping through it. I'm first going to give you guys some time to do it, and then I'll start stepping through it slowly as well. So, real quick, let's talk some general strategies before we continue. If you look at index.js, there's really nothing in here. We didn't give you a function. I would highly recommend creating a function. Does anyone know how to remember how to declare a function? Can you tell me how to do it? No hands? Do you speak up? And then, what would I do? Yep. So, close. You don't need this equal sign here when you're declaring a function. And then we would put in parameters, and then curly braces, and our function goes here. function that does the work. That what happens when the button is clicked. Has anyone figured out how to add an event listener? Okay. I'll give a couple minutes more, we'll figure it out, and then I will call them. How are we doing? Show of these thumb things. Okay, I got 2 thumbs. I'm very happy for participation. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to first start off. I'm going to do one step. I'm going to try adding an event listener to the new status button. So before I can add something to the object, I need to get the object first. So does someone help me with how I would grab the object? Hands, or just shout. So document.getElement by ID, and we put in the ID, which is new dash status dash button. Cool. Since we want to access this, I'm going to make it another variable. I'm a variable heavy person, so I'm just going to set it equal to a constant called button. How? Yes?
If you set it to a constant called button, then every time you call the button, it's always going to return your status.
It will not call this again. So what we've done is we've saved the output of this, which is a function, to this variable button, the constant button. So every time we access button again, we're actually accessing what was saved from this, which was the DOM element with new status button as the ID. Cool.
So just practically speaking, you can just make it button because you're going to have a button.
Yeah, practically speaking, you probably don't want to actually just call it button, but for this small workshop, we're going to just do a button. So how would I add an event listener? Hands. Yes?
Button dot add event listener, and then we say but, and then we say make new post.
Awesome. So what we're doing here is we added this event listener that listens for clicks to this DOM element that we found. And then once it's found, it does this callback or this function, make new post, which currently does nothing. We haven't put 2 parentheses after make new post. This is important because if you do, it will actually call the function. It won't actually save that as the function instead. So I'm just gonna do a quick, yes, sorry.
If like the new post has like parameters that you feed into it, you still can use them for fantasy.
You know what, I'm going to check that actually. So, the question was if there were parameters that go into make new post, would you have the parentheses after with the parameters passed in? The answer should be yes. So I'm going to double check my thoughts about whether or not I need the parentheses now. So to check that, I'm going to console log I'm running in this. So I'll see and refresh this page, open up the console. So when I click post, it then says I'm running. So I see that it's only being called then. Cool. I'm going to check whether if I have parentheses afterwards when it gets called. So I'll refresh the page. Oh, and it looks fine. Nothing has been called yet. And then I press post, nothing's happening though. So it's not actually calling it. So it appears that if you don't have parameters, you should not put the parentheses in. So I'm going to go ahead and try whether parameters matter. So I'm going to pass in user, and we're going to have to add another variable or parameter here. And instead I'll log the name of a user, which is defined up there, this object. So if I refresh the page, and I click post, nothing happens. So it appears I cannot pass in parameters like this. So there are other ways to pass in parameters, because it's a callback function right now, it doesn't let you do this. So for now, and since we don't need to pass in parameters, it's fine. In the future though, if you do want something that does pass in parameters, you're going to have to go a bit of a roundabout way to do that. We're not going to discuss this during this exercise. I would highly recommend you look it up if you're interested, but you can also talk to us afterwards and I'll explain that as well. But also want to go through that process to show if you're curious about whether something works or not, you can console log to check and debug. Cool. We're going to move on to the next step. So the next thing is we want to create a new div that has the information new status text and add that. So what's the first thing I would do in the make new post function? Hands or words, both work. Okay, so first I need to be able to get the items, whatever is in this text box, right? We can either do that or create the element first. I'm going to go ahead and get what's in this text first to make sure I can access this element. So to access this element, we use a similar method as what we did for button. We're going to get element by ID again. I'm going to use let. I don't like using constants instead of functions. I don't actually know if that's because it's good or bad coding practice, but that's my explanation for that. So new let status equal document dot get element by ID, and read again. It's called new status text. So now I've got the whole DOM element, but I only want the inner text. Or, in this case, since it's an input box, we actually want the value. So, to explain that, if you look here, inputs don't actually have inner text inside them. Inputs don't have an end tag. Instead, what we see is that the value will change instead. So we actually want to get hello, we need to get the value. So I'm going to add dot value to access that attribute at the end. And just to be clear that this is not a DOM element, I'm going to add and rename this let status value. Now, I'm going to check if that's working, because it's always good sometimes. If you're not entirely sure, check. And you can use console log. So, I'll refresh the page. Type hello. I'll also switch to console and press post. And indeed, it got the value hello. So that worked. Does anyone have any questions about what I've done so far? Cool. Does someone want to tell me what goes next? What should I be doing after I grab the value? Well, in that case, I'm going to go check back instructions. We want to create a new div that should be added below in the stories div. So, how do I create a new element? Does someone want to tell me? Yes? Yes. So, we're going to create new story instead of document dot create element. And what goes inside here? Yep. A string called div. I don't know who said that, but yes, that was correct. So now I want to create and put text inside this div. So what do I do, or how do I add text to this div? Or change the text? Yes?
New story dot inner text equals
Yes. So new story dot inner text equals status value. Now, if you didn't do dot value for status value and actually were accessing the DOM element, you would then do dot value here. But because we already are referencing dot value, we don't do that. Any questions in so far? Yes? Yes. So we want to append child. We will have to append child, actually. We haven't done it yet because we haven't finished making the div and adding things to the div yet. So we're going to do it at the end. Good question. All right, cool. Now I'm going to check out what our next step is. So we're going to be changing, so we've added the div and create the div. And now we want to add the new div to stories. So this is what you, last person just asked about, mentioned. So how do we add new story? We can add it to the document using append child. We actually want to append it to a specific place. So we want to be added below in the stories div. So we actually need to get the stories div again. And if we look here and inspect this element, there is indeed a div below this called div ID stories, which is currently empty. So we're going to get that div, and then we're going to append the element in. How would I do this? Okay. We just did all of the steps earlier. I know you can do this. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yep. So, to check if that worked, I'm going to save it and then try it myself. So we'll refresh the page. Hello, press post. And it appeared. If I keep pressing it, we're going to get more and more. Did anyone get the bonus? If you can clear the
change like the value, if I change it to an empty string?
Yep. So the way you can do that is you can access status value and do equal to empty string. So now we've changed status value back to nothing. So if we refresh this page, hard refresh, type hello, press post. Whew, it didn't work.
Status value is just like the variable, not like so you have to do it again.
That's true. Nice. So the reason why is because we've accessed value here. And instead, what we need to do is access the DOM element. What's actually saved by that is the value as a string. So what we were getting here when it was .value before is just hello. So we were changing status hello. We were just changing the string hello into an empty string, but not actually accessing the DOM element itself. So it wasn't changing what the actual text was. So we need to re-access the DOM element again, and then change the value there. So we can try again, and it works. So, just as an exercise, that lets you show what type of elements and what should we actually save as your variables. So if we wanted to actually edit the DOM element, we shouldn't have saved status value to the element .value, because it becomes immutable. We can't change. We can't change the original thing. So, trade-offs. I had to type .value more, which is one extra character a couple times, but I can now do more things with it. And that's it. You guys did it. Here is a different version of the same code. So I'm going to explain the difference between the two. So, it grabbed the button, it added the event listener much like we did, but instead of declaring a separate function, it declared an anonymized function by declaring it within here. So doing function, empty parameter, and then doing this. So the reason why there are parentheses here is we're actually constructing a function, an anonymized function, and you actually do need the parentheses, and it doesn't execute the function. To quickly explain that, doing this declares the function. Did I spell function? Okay. So if I had this within the event listener, if I then did parentheses again afterwards, it would have then called the function, and we would have seen the same breakage that we had when we did make the posted parentheses there. But because function here is actually creating the function itself and declaring it, we don't have this issue. That's why that's there. So it does similar things, grabs the text input, grabs the new status, gets our stories div, and then we create the element, change the inner text, and then append the child, and then we change the value. It does the same thing, just written slightly differently, in the different places. Does anyone have an idea about why we might want to create a separate function and not an anonymized function? Yes? Yep. So if I wanted to use the function somewhere else, I would not be able to here, in this solution up here. Because the function is anonymized and I can't call it anywhere except for right there. It's on that event listener. It's been tied there. If we actually named it something, it could be used somewhere else. Awesome job, guys. You learned a lot already. You can check out the final solution. You guys did a lot. It was great, and I really loved you all for participating. Thank you. My heartfelt moment. If you would like to check out the complete code, you can go to git reset --hard, and then check out branch complete, and then all your code will be the final solution. Final words before you all leave. Did you take a picture? Cool. What we did is we're using JS to make things happen with a bunch of boxes. We are able to modify elements, create new elements, and give elements actions. JavaScript brings to life your HTML. It brings to life your site. You're going to use a lot more of it. So keep that in mind. Great job. Aaron was going to show a couple things.
Yeah. Hi guys, some useful tricks. I remember some people have run into this in years past, but some things that I just have taken for granted at this point. So there's two ways. So you see how she has this navigator on the left? So this is really useful. Oh, thank you. This is really useful if you want to open a work folder, and especially in web development, you're usually switching between a bunch of files at once. So the way you do this is you do file, and then you type like, you can do like open, and then all you just need to do is you need to select a folder, and once you select a folder, it will automatically open it in this navigator over here. Another option that also should work for most people, and if this doesn't work for you, you might just want to speak up and I'll try to fix it. But if you have VS Code installed, it's really nice because it should be built into your command line at this point, and you should just be able to type code. And then as like kind of Rupai mentioned with command line tools, period means the current directory. So currently we're in JavaScript Workshop 0. So if you just type code, okay, so she doesn't have it on hers, so there we go. So some people might not have that set up. For some of you guys it will work just off the bat, but it's a really useful way for it just to open up VS Code in your current directory. So that's just a tip, makes life a lot easier. So if it doesn't work for you and you want it to work, you just can stop by afterwards and we'll look at it. Get ready for tomorrow, we're going to do a bunch of fun stuff with servers and actually get some communication to the back end.